Hey everyone, Jason Weckerle here, and this is part 2 of my night fishing for bass video. I made part 1 about using hard baits like spinner baits, jerk baits, stuff like that, topwater lures. But I wanted to show you guys other lures that I love using at night that catch tons of bass. Some nights they won't go after hard baits. They won't chase anything down. They're lazy, they're sluggish, which bass often are pretty sluggish. Even during the daytime when you're catching tons of them, or at night. We use plastic worms a lot. We use finesse fishing presentations a lot. But that doesn't change at night either. The only difference is we seem to step up the size of the baits we use, and we fish a lot slower. The thing is, with nighttime bass fishing, you want to go to spots that you catch them during the day, spots that you're familiar with, because it's not a thing where you're searching at night as much as you do during the day. You want to go somewhere familiar, pick that spot apart. I mean, if you're going to fan cast off your boat where you cast in every direction, during the day, if you cast at 3 o'clock, noon, 9 o'clock, at night, your fan casting should be more like 3 o'clock, 2:30, 2 o'clock, 1:30. You want to pick apart every single spot and get the bait in front of as many fish as possible, whether you're using a spinner bait, a topwater, a crankbait, a jerk bait, whatever. Make sure you're picking apart the water and you're fishing slower, more precisely. You want a good headlamp because, well, you're going to have to see at night, and using your cell phone flashlight is a pain in the butt. You also want to make sure you're not packing every single fishing rod in every tackle box, and you make sure everything's out of your way in the boat. You make sure on shore you're not putting your fishing rod on the ground where it can be stepped on. Prop those fishing rods up on a wall or a tree or a bush, whatever you can. But I'm going to show you guys some techniques that aren't much different than what we do during the day for bass, but they're slightly larger, maybe even more heavy at times. My number one favorite bait to use that's not a hard bait is a big plastic worm, a big curly tail, like this Berkeley Power Bait Matte Scent curly tail worm, or a Zoom curly tail worm. Any curly tail worm that's 8 inches or longer, 8 to 12 inches, but I normally go with 8 to 10 inch curly tail worms at night. And you want to fish these on like a 4/0 or a 5/0 weedless hook, like a EWG weedless hook, Texas rigged, with about a 1/2 ounce to 3/4 ounce sinker. And what I like to do is I like to use brass sinkers at night, kind of like Carolina rig sinkers, because they put out a bunch of noise when you put a little glass rattle bead right below it and right above your hook. You want to peg the sinker on your line with either a toothpick or a rubber peg. I prefer rubber pegs because they don't cut your line like a toothpick will. But I leave I'd say about a 1/2 inch from the hook to the bead so that it can slide up and down, and you can hear this. At night, that sound, you want to shake the worm on the bottom a lot sometimes to get their attention so they can hear it. But just brass has a very loud metallic sound when it's banging against a glass bead. And I mean, you can get away with lead or tungsten, but that brass just super loud. And what you do is you throw that worm out there, let it sink all the way to the bottom, and you just want to slowly hop it, let it fall back down, and then shake it in place. Pause it and work it super slow across the bottom. And since it's weedless, you can snake through the grass, the tall weeds, whatever. But the color black, just like I told you guys in the first video with topwater baits and everything, stands out as a silhouette. I like to use black and green pumpkin or dark purple, black and blue, like darker colors traditionally at night. But if you're dealing with like a lot of dock lights or super bright full moon conditions, bright colors can really be a better option sometimes, like a white, fat white 5-6 inch curly tail grub on a jig head, or like a white crankbait or a white topwater. But don't neglect these fat curly tail grubs at night for bass. They account for a lot of bass and a lot of walleyes, even nighttime pike. But I go with white when it's brighter, and I got brighter conditions usually. And if it's a new moon or I'm dealing with a darker night, a cloudy night, black is just fine. I mean, I tend to go with dark colors almost all the time when I'm nighttime fishing, because I've found they work in bright conditions and dark conditions, full moon or new moon. But that curly tail worm is dynamite. You can use a long straight tail worm. You can also use, on a Texas rig, lizards like your normal traditional zoom lizard. Those work really well. Another good bait to use is a brush hog. Oh, here they are. A big brush hog, which a lot of these baits are old school. They've been around for a long time. This is just a zoom brush hog. It's a big bait. It stands out in the water, like I said. At night, the fish can't see as well, so something bigger helps them track the bait down, and it tends to cause a lot more strikes than something that's really small. Like, we tend to fish like 3 to 6 inch skinny baits or Ned worms or wacky worms during the day, which you can catch fish on that stuff at night, especially if you're dealing with a lot of light sources from street bridges and street lights, dock lights, stuff like that. But normally we're not around spots that are that lit up, and sometimes you're fishing in the pitch black beneath the stars and moon. So a larger bait helps the bass trap down the lure a lot easier. And the thing is with bass at night, the reason I tell you guys to fan cast and pick apart every single piece of structure and fish slower is so that you get that bait in front of the most fish that you can, because they're not always chasing. A lot of those bites you get on top water, you get those bites along the shoreline or next to docks because they might be feeding on frogs. But when it comes to like most fishing at night, you're gonna have to get the bait past those fish's faces so that they attack it, which that's why the spinner bait is really good. They can feel it vibrating and shaking past them, and they react to it. But a lot of fish have to be tempted, just like during the daytime, and that's why finesse fishing with soft plastics is so deadly for bass. Another bait that I love to use at night is a power bait chigger craw on about a 3/8 ounce black and blue jig. You can get away with green pumpkin, you can get away with a lot of colors. Even white, like I said, white can work really good at night during the full moon or brighter conditions. But I just put that chigger craw. The reason I like the chigger craw is because these crayfish pinchers flap like that through the water, which a lot of trailers that you find, they don't do that. And I mean, you can get away with using your standard zoom chunk on the back of your jig, or just anything like that. But like I said, you want a lot of movement, a lot of water displacement at night, vibration, sound. You want to get their attention when you got those little crayfish pinchers flapping and swimming around. That could be really deadly. This is a 3/8 ounce bass jig, and this is about, I'd say, a 1/4 ounce chatterbait. They look similar, only the chatterbait has a metal lip in the front. But I use that chigger craw trailer for both of those type of baits. You just throw it on there straight, just like so. You got yourself one of the deadliest bass lures day or night ever made. Some guys say this is the #1 bass lure in existence. But you throw that out there, let it sink to the bottom just like the big curly tail worm, and you just work it slowly and hop it and let it fall back down. Let those crayfish pinchers swim around. Absolutely deadly. If you're going with the chatterbait, throw it out there, let it sink, and you can just reel it slowly so that blade starts kicking. Or you can pull up, let it fall back down, pull up, let it fall back down, kind of like a yo-yoing retrieve, and you'll feel that vibration on your rod tip from the blade shaking. Very deadly. And one of the last things I like to use for soft plastics are larger Kitech type baits, like these fat 4.5 to 6-inch version baits. I like using black, green pumpkin, but this, I forget the name of this color, silver flash minnow. I've done really well on this. This is 4.5 inches. And I take a Trocar swim bait hook. This one has a spinner blade on it. Again, it sends out a little extra vibration and sound. It's got a screw lock mechanism. So you just twist the bait right on that screw lock. Make sure it's going on straight. There we go. And since I'm not using this bait right now, well, screw it, I'll rig it up for you. I just don't like tearing plastics until I use them, but for the sake of a video, you just rig that Texas rig style weedless and throw that out there, let it sink to the bottom, and reel it really slow. You'll catch walleyes at night, you'll catch bass, sometimes pike. You might even get a muskie to bite at night. I mean, muskies, fish get kind of stupid at night because they're roaming around, they're feeding. A lot of fish can't see as well at night, so they make mistakes. Like during the day, sometimes you'll have fish looking at your plastic worm or your lure, sometimes for several minutes, and not bite it. But at night, they're more likely to bite it if you get it in their face, because they don't know what it is. That's why the bigger plastic worms, the bigger baits, tend to work at night a little bit better. But don't be afraid to downsize to your standard 5-inch wacky worms or shaky worms and smaller baits if you're dealing with a lot of light sources that the fish can pick up on. Bait's a little easier in. But those baits right there, besides the jitterbug, the whopper plopper, the the Weckerle original F9 and F11, chatterbaits, all like bass jigs, all those curly tail worms, all this stuff works. I hope this is making sense to you guys. I mean, bass fishing at night isn't as popular as it is during the day, but some of the biggest bass get caught. Sometimes you will deal with bite windows, like if you're dealing with a moonrise or a moonset, where the fish don't bite during the day and they bite like crazy at night. And if you're not out there fishing, you'd never know about it. Some people like fishing during the day more, some people like fishing at night more. I just like fishing whenever the hell the fish are biting. And oftentimes, nighttime is the best time. It's quieter out, you deal with less boat traffic, less pleasure boaters and morons burning up the lake and throwing waves over the side of your boat and getting too close to your fishing area. It's just sometimes daytime on these Northwoods lakes and southern Wisconsin lakes turns into a total zoo. And nighttime helps you escape all the pleasure boaters, all the fishing pressure, and also helps you escape the heat during summertime, which night fishing during summer is very effective. And I mean, you got 80 to 100 degree days that can be in the 60s at night. So why would you want to be out there sweating or breaking a sweat and suffering for a few fish when you can catch them at night too? You can do this from shore, you can do this from boat. Like I said, just look for bridges that have lights, street lights, dock lights. Fish the spots you know have bass and you're familiar with. Pick them apart and you'll catch a lot of bass at night. I can guarantee that. Just give it a shot if you never have. You might lose some sleep. You might need to wear some bug repellent spray. But it's well worth it if you got a 5, 6, 7 pounder in your hands. Because most of those big fish are deep during the day and they come super shallow at night. I mean, I've heard stories about guys catching largemouth and smallmouth bass in like 60 feet of water that are chasing alewives, smelt, ciscos during the day. But when they're reeling these bass in, they're puking up crayfish parts. Crayfish don't live in 60 feet of water, and those bass are not suspending for crayfish over deep water. So those bass are going into shore at night, feeding on those crayfish in the rocks. So just get out there during the moonrise, moonset periods. Try to plan your fishing trips around warm fronts, not cold fronts. You never want a cold front. So give night fishing a shot, and I hope this information helped in this 2-part video. These are my favorite ways to catch nighttime bass, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more nighttime videos bass fishing in the future. If you guys like this video, subscribe to my page, hit the like button, get out there and throw some jigs and some soft plastics around, and have fun. Good luck fishing and stay safe.